Have you ever noticed how the higher up any organisation you go, the less accountability there seems to be? It's like when you rise right up to the top, it's like nothing matters. None of it, nothing's your responsibility. I want to say this like as carefully as possible because this isn't about throwing accusations around, but it is about asking a very simple question that any normal, rational person would ask when they look at exactly what's going on around Keir Starmer and his like inner circle at the moment. People like Peter Mandelson. I've been following this guy since the shock announcement that he was actually going to be considered as the US ambassador, because I'm old enough to remember all of the other scandals that he was involved in. You know, there's multiple occasions where he was booted out of his job because of misconduct, getting loans to buy properties that he hadn't declared. And there's just so much scandal surrounding this guy that you wouldn't touch him with a barge pole. So when I heard that his name was being brought back into the fold, I didn't nod along. I paused and I thought, what is going on here? And I'm sure a lot of you did as well. Because the question isn't just about Mandelson himself. It's about judgment, it's about integrity, and it's about decision making at the very top of our government, of our country. Why bring someone back into such a sensitive position like that? Why take the risk at all? And more specifically, why place him in a role as critical as representing Britain in Washington when there were so many other people that would have been far superior as a choice? Why him? Why now? Why overlook the existing structures already in place, the experienced career diplomatic presence that was already there doing the job perfectly well? Because these aren't small little decisions. These aren't just like throwaway things that you decide, over dinner on a Friday night. These are deliberate choices. I personally have been through the developed vetting process when I was in the army, the proper DV clearance. And anyone else that's done that knows exactly what that means. They go through your life in fine detail, your finances, your relationships, what porn you look at, your character, your past, and they know everything. And what they're doing is they want to see whether or not you're going to hide anything from them. They already know. So you be honest and you say, yeah, that's what I've done. And then they're trying to gauge your integrity or the ability for you to be blackmailed. It is not a surface level check. It's intrusive by design because the stakes are that high. You are being trusted with incredibly sensitive information and the responsibility of managing that, with all of the potential influencers that could try and get that information intelligence off you. So the whole point of the developed vetting process is to eliminate risk, not identify risk and then just ignore it. So when I look at the situation unfolding at the very top of government, I can't help but ask that question. How? How do issues like this get this far? How do decisions like this get made? How do the safeguards that are supposed to exist and certainly existed when I went through it not exist or catch it, at that higher level? I would have been exposed to certain intelligence, but nothing like, state secrets that somebody like Mandelson could share with China or Russia, etc. You can't just ignore this process. It's there for a reason. Because in any serious system, especially one dealing with national security, there's layers, there's checks on tops of checks, there's oversight, balances, accountability, and most importantly, and this is the key thing, responsibility for all of that sits with the leader at the top, Keir Starmer. And that's not my opinion, that is how leadership works. So when anything like this happens, we're not stupid, are we? We don't just switch off and accept the vague explanations that we get told. We start joining the dots. And whether people like it or not, we the public are going to start forming our own conclusions. And the conclusion many people will come to is this. Either the Prime Minister knew what he was bringing back into the fold, or he didn't. And if he knew, then people will question his judgment. And if he didn't, then people will question how someone, the Prime Minister, in a position like that could have been unaware of the implications. So you end up, the people out there will end up in a place where, fairly or unfairly, they will say Keir Starmer was either complicit or incompetent. and that if he's either of those things, he's not fit for purpose as a Prime Minister. And that's not because someone told the public out there to think like that. It's not because of some grand, like, Chinese influence campaign or Russian influence campaign or any other, conspiracy theory. It is because that is the logical outcome when you join the dots together and trust breaks down. And this is the bigger issue here, trust and integrity. They take an awful long time to build and a second to destroy. Because once people start believing that the rules are not applied equally across the board, and we've already seen this with other sort of examples of two-tier justice, two-tier policing, two-tier government, once they start feeling that there's one standard for them, the elites, and then another one far stricter for the rest of us, that's when the real damage is done. It's not just about one man. And this is the thing, it's like the office of the Prime Minister, the office of the Ambassador to the United States of America. It is the rank that it holds. And so you can't play games with that, because it's not just about the appointment right now, it's whether or not the system still has the integrity and whether or not the people still believe in it. Because I'll tell you something else from experience, the standards expected of ordinary people in positions of responsibility are extremely high, as they should be. You're scrutinised, you're questioned, you're tested, and if something doesn't add up, you don't simply get waved through, simple as that. And this is the issue. It's like, well, why was he allowed to just be waved through? Because, the people at the top who are clearly operating to different standards, the public are going to look at them and ask, are those same standards being applied there? And if the answer feels like no, then it creates a gap. A disconnect between the people, the public, and those that govern them. And once that gap opens, it doesn't close easily. You start visualising it being like the Hunger Games society, where everyone's just sort of scrapping around, and then you've got this elite that's just sort of living, in luxury, this incredible life. And that is exactly where we're getting to right now. And people will not forget the moment that the penny drops, that they realise that this isn't right. They don't forget the moment when they start questioning whether the system is working for them or against them. And that is exactly where we are right now. Not in a place of certainty of what's going on, but in a place of doubt, a place where there's a lack of integrity and a place where there's a distrust. And doubt, when it reaches this level, is so powerful that it can bring down governments. So let's see what happens on Monday, because that's when Starmer's going to announce everything he knew about this situation. Who knows? He might stand down.